We all know that the right habits and mindsets can be transformational in how we live our lives. But among the sea of advice online, it can be challenging to know who to trust with these important life decisions. At The Standard, we answer those questions and introduce you to some of the most successful people in the world in their fields and the habits and the mindsets they use to achieve their success. To learn more about our social platform, head on over to www.thestandardapp.com. And now, your host, myself, Chris Palatroni. Welcome to another episode of The Standard. I am your host, Chris Palatroni, and today's guest is Heide Lindgren. She is a model of 20 plus years, a graduate from Columbia University in psychology. She has spent a number of years working in the mental health profession and recently started her own practice as a fitness coach to women around the world, which if you sort of stack all those things together, I can't imagine a better person to coach women than someone who has a degree in psychology, understands the importance of mental health and physical fitness and so forth. Heidi is a really fun person to talk to. I've known her for a couple of years. I loved her content on social media, and I reached out when I was first starting the project on The Standard, and she was quick to reply and willing to help and contribute a few videos to the platform, sharing some of her self-care habits and mindsets. And one video in particular is a video that she shared on anxiety, something that she has dealt with for the majority of her life. And the video was about a grounding technique that helped her sort of navigate through anxious moments. And so I've shared that video with a number of people because anxiety is a very big topic that a lot of people in the world deal with. And I thought her explanation for it was very authentic. And I thought the technique that she provided was well rooted in behavioral science and just one I've used myself. So I've shared it with a number of people. What makes Heidi so fun to talk to is, one, she has a very infectious smile and a great aura about her. It is really easy to like her, and you start to realize how smart she is. She knows so much about these topics. And so in the beginning of this episode, like most other guests, we dive into their background. And so she shares a little bit of why she got into psychology and mental health and what led her to start her own fitness practice and what she really enjoys about that, which I found very interesting. And then from there, we dive into her best habit, mindset, and sort of her wish for the world. We cover topics like daily movement. We talk about healthy lifestyle, what surprised her the most about coaching people. We talk about behavior. We talk about a great mindset that she has, which is it's not okay. It's not the end. And so she sort of unravels that a little bit for us and talks about how she's navigated being an entrepreneur and dealing with fear of failure and sort of how she's had to reframe some things in her life. So this was a really fun episode. This was easily an episode I could have continued to talk to Heidi for quite some time. And I think you'll see that she's just a wealth of knowledge and just so experienced and has so much to share. So I did the best job I could to tease as much out of her as possible. I hope you enjoy the episode as much as I did. And I look forward to having Heidi back at one point. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Heidi. Well, I'm going to say, Heidi, I'm really excited to talk to you
Yeah.
because I mean, you know a fair amount about the project that I've been working on. And when I started this podcast, it was so fun because season one is really about just interviewing all the really cool coaches I've met around the world. And there's just so many that I've met. I can't get them all into season one, but I've had people from Canada and from India and from Latin America. And just, a lot of them are coaches, which what I find so interesting about that is y'all are experts. Like so much about habits and exercise and mental health and all of this. So to challenge you and ask you to be like, well, what's that one thing that you do? I recognize is a tough feat, and we'll definitely get into that. But I've had the opportunity to really crawl into your background a lot more, and I've just got hopefully not too many questions as we sort of move through this. But I think first off is just thank you for joining, and thank you for sharing some of your stuff on The Standard. It's nice to have you on.
Yeah, it's, like, honestly an honor to be asked. I know you have a lot of really amazing people, so I was very, very pleased when you asked me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, yay, yay. Well, let's do this. So before we start to dive into all these questions. And I saw that you put some notes in the doc. I didn't look at any of those because I like to be surprised. What I'd
Okay.
love to do is have you give us a little bit of your background. I could probably do it, but I would miss some stuff here. So I'd love you just to walk us through like who is Heidi, and then we'll sort of as we move through that, like what do you do today? Because I know you work with a bunch of clients. Well, I won't go into too much detail. I'll let you sort of describe it. But yeah, please give us an overview of who Heidi is and what you do as a professional.
Sure. Okay. So, what most people know me for is my modeling career. I've been modeling since I was 13 years old internationally and had a really wonderful career doing that. I feel incredibly lucky. I loved every second of it. But I decided when I was 29 to go back to school. So, I went to Columbia University, got my degree in psychology, and while I was doing that, my life kind of got flipped on its head, and I went from 14 years in New York City to moving in with my dad in Boise, Idaho. I went through a divorce, and COVID was happening, and so there was no modeling happening. It was just everything happened at once. So found myself out here, finished my degree in psych, and then I actually started working at an inpatient psych hospital. I then moved to outpatient psych and managed the outpatient department at a mental health services agency. So, really have spent most of my time out here in the mental health field. It's a space that I really love. I'm a total brain lover. And, you know, I, I've always kind of had this dream and vision of marrying physical fitness and mental health because I've dealt with anxiety my whole life. And I really dealt with that in the gym space. I was terrified of going into the gym. I would often turn around and walk out, or, at best, I'd get on the treadmill and kind of just hope nobody was looking at me and judging me or anything. And so when I came out to Idaho and everything had been flipped on its head and I felt like nothing was in my control, I went, what is in my control? My fitness and what I put in my body. So I decided to just take that by the horns and I started just working out at my dad's house. I got my personal training certification. I figure, knowledge is power. And if I know what I'm doing and I walk back into a gym one day and somebody wants to say something to me, I can be like, excuse me, I think I know what I'm talking about. So, yeah, it just sort of catapulted this dive into mental and physical health, and how do I bring these two together? Because I benefited from it so much. I built my confidence back up after my divorce and everything, just starting over, showing up for myself in the gym really just proved to be this unbelievable source of confidence and allowed me to rebuild. So, eventually, I quit my job in mental health, started my company, and I now coach women in doing the same thing, but in a way that works for them. So for me, I love to go to the gym. I love to lift weights. I know not everybody loves that. So I'm here to help women figure out how to live an intentional, healthy, and fit life that works for them.
I love it. I've got like 12 questions running through my head, so I'm going to try to prioritize it. So let's start with Columbia University. You
Yeah.
got a degree in psychology. Why did you get a degree in psychology? What were you hoping to learn, and where did you think you were headed at that time, if you remember?
Oh, no, I do remember. I wanted to go into therapy. I wanted to be a therapist. I wasn't really sure if I was going to go for a PhD or a master's or an LMFW or a LPC or what, but I wanted to go into therapy. As I touched on, like anxiety's been a pretty paralyzing part of my life. I mean, I dropped out of high school and got my GED because I couldn't cope with being there. It's really been a pretty destructive thing for me. So I became just sort of obsessed with the understanding of why. So it was sort of, I think this is true for a lot of people who major in psych. It was kind of a selfish thing, to be honest with you. Like, as much as I wanted to help other people, I wanted to understand my own brain and like try to fix what it was that felt so paralyzing to me. And it certainly taught me a lot, a lot. And I took a lot of clinically focused courses. I don't have a graduate level degree, but I took a lot of clinically focused courses that I think helped me in my coaching today.
Yeah, with the when you were in school and you even mentioned like the gym, was it social anxiety? Was it that or was it something different?
Social anxiety is definitely a thing for me. In fact, like we could get into a whole conversation around like alcohol and coping and how I'm not doing that anymore. And, it really, I think that's true for a lot of people. Social anxiety is very real. But the gym, it was, I think, more of I don't know how to do it right. I'm scared I'm doing it wrong. I'm scared I'm going to look stupid. I'm also feeling like I'm wasting my time because I don't have the knowledge. And it was this like attack of all these different thoughts that just made me think like, like, what am I even doing here? And just, it's paralyzing. That's the only word for it.
Yeah.
And so even though I know now something is better than nothing, I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
Yeah. Anxiety is such an interesting, I mean, you've been in mental health. I mean, I think anxiety, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, anxiety is one of the top mental health disorders on the planet, right up there with like depression. It's like
Yeah.
350, upwards to 400 million people that deal with this from all ages. I got a little guy. We dealt with I don't know the clinical term for it, but it was going back like he missed a key year in COVID. I think it was first grade and part of second grade, which are key development years from like a social perspective.
Right.
And so when we homeschooled him, we put him back, and I mean, dude, I mean, break your heart. I mean, drop offs were just tear jerking. I mean, literally, he is like having like a full on panic attack, just like, and so there's like this social stuff, and he worked his way through it, but so many people face it. And I remember I've actually shared your video specifically on the standard because so many people deal with anxiety. I'm like, oh, dude, you got to watch this video of Heidi. You talked about the grounding technique.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess I would just ask you just on that topic, like, does that help you? Does it not always work for you? Or like, where does the grounding technique fit into anxiety? And do you still deal with anxiety?
Oh my gosh. Yes, I absolutely still deal with it, and I still use grounding, that especially that specific technique all the time, that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 that we talked about. With anxiety, like, you get so into your head and you get into these, like, I almost, like, wanna call them tornadoes that, it's almost like a narrowing and, like, a spinning of what's going on. And what grounding allows you to do is step back and almost like zoom out. And actually, Andrew Huberman talks about like, opening up the periphery of your vision even as a really great tool. So literally, like, if I'm just looking straight ahead of me, I'm looking at a TV right now, but I can actually switch my focus and see there's a refrigerator over there, there's a plant over here, and it just like broadens your focus. And that's what grounding does for me, is it's like it takes this tiny little thing that I've zoomed in on it and I'm just like spinning around with, and I'm able to
Mhm.
back up and be like, wait a second, there's this whole freaking world. This is not that big of a problem. I'm making it into this huge problem, but like, it just brings you back to reality almost.
Yeah. Why did you get into mental health? Because I mean, I think when I last spoke with you just maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, you were in the mental health space. What was the catalyst to get into that? Like, what were you hoping to learn or help people with when you got into that?
Yeah, well, again, it was just, understanding the human brain, understanding why people behave the way that they do and helping them get out of their own way. I think we all have such unbelievable capabilities as humans, and most often we are the only ones stopping ourselves from reaching our true potential. So if you can help somebody get out of their own head and see what they're capable of, like, how much greater would we all be, right? How much more of a fulfilled life would we live if we could just get out of our own way? And the opportunity to help people do that was really appealing to me.
So then COVID hit, modeling, the jobs were either non-existent or sparse, and you chose to get into this fitness coaching, which is sort of this blend between how do you stay healthy and then some of the psychology and rewiring the brain. It's a I think as a fitness coach, you're like a therapist, a life coach. There's so much entwined with that. So I totally recognize that. But why did you go down that path? Like, what was the reason to start that as your like next adventure?
Well, I mean, I think if you take, 5 minutes and go online, you see how I can't throw a percentage at it, but almost everybody that has a health and fitness goal of any sort, whether their doctor tells them they need to do something, make a change, or they want to do it for themselves, I mean, the success rates are like next to nothing, right?
Yeah.
Um, And I actually speak to this in one of the Instagram videos I have up. Um, if you're trying to get healthy and you're failing, it's going to be probably pretty indicative of something else that's going on, right? So I'm also a personal trainer at an all-female gym. I really love my in-person connections with my ladies. They're fantastic. And you can come in and meet with me once or twice a week, and that's great. Movement's awesome. But what about when I can't see you anymore? Or what about if you move? Or what about if you don't have the money for personal training anymore? It's really about getting at that piece that is keeping you from doing it on your own. What do you believe to be true about yourself, about what you deserve, about what you're capable of? What are you telling yourself that's keeping you from being able to do this on your own? I think that, marrying those two things, you actually hit the nail on the head. I like to say it's a mixture between personal training and life coaching. I think it's important to help people get that piece because otherwise you wind up succeeding and then, like you're on that roller coaster. You lose weight or gain muscle or whatever, but then as soon as you stop with whatever it is that you're doing, you go back to your old behaviors. Let's get rid of those old behaviors. Let's fundamentally change who you are from the inside out so that you can feel empowered to do this on your own. A lot of people say that with personal training or fitness coaching or anything like that, you want to, you know, have lifetime clients. I don't want a lifetime client. Nope. I want to help you be able to do this on your own. I want you to be like, I don't need you anymore. Thanks. Bye. you know?
Yeah, I hear you. It's a behavioral change specialist. Oh my God, there's so many different directions we can go. There's a lady when I was doing a lot of research prior to this. There's I don't know if you follow her. I'm just gonna look at the top of your Instagram because you guys would like. I mean, your life is already busy, but you'd be BFF. She's so awesome. She's actually, I think, number 4 on our episode, Abby DeGraff.
Okay.
I'm going to send you a link because you should totally connect. She is
Yeah,
the
please do.
coolest human being. She's out of Madison, Wisconsin. And she does, I mean, she's pretty much doing what you're doing. And she's got her own
Okay.
wellness company. She trains women. She's really big into working out. But like you, she understands there's so much more than just lifting a weight. She's got
Yeah.
4 boys, so you can imagine how much love is in her household. So she's trying to do it all. And we connect every handful of months and just talk about like the pressure of life and
Yeah.
like, I mean, you mentioned, and then like there's just self doubt. I mean, it really doesn't matter how many times you've done it. I think a lot of that stuff's just very natural. You guys would just totally hit it off, dude. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I'm gonna refer her, and there's one other chick out of London. I think you'd really like. She's really big into yoga, and she's a neuroscientist too.
Oh,
Celeste.
cool.
Yeah, you would totally geek out on her stuff. Anyways, digress there for a moment. I'm curious. So before we dive into your personal habits and stuff, I'm curious as a coach, you're talking so much about behavioral change. What has been the most surprising thing you've learned thus far in coaching women? Like what is the thing? Is there anything that stands out to you as like, God, I just didn't see that coming? Or yeah, what stands out to you the most at this point so far?
I wish I was surprised by it, but I'm not. The focus on weight is so huge, especially for women. And, you not only are constantly confronting the person to person comparisons of, I want to look like her, or, the celebrity, or even, you don't even have to deal with celebrities, but, I had a client at the gym the other day talking to me about how she compares herself to these like 20-year-olds that are coming into the gym and she's in her 40s.
Oh,
And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're going to drive yourself crazy, you know? So, whether it's comparing yourself to other people or even comparing yourself to a past version of yourself, it's so powerful. Like, I knew that it was a thing, but I really am saddened constantly by the focus on it. And I really am pushing with my clients a lot the focus on healthy habits. And if you happen to lose weight, awesome. If you don't, that's fine. Biomarkers and all your physiological things can improve without you necessarily losing weight. So I'm really trying super hard to help women focus on a different set of metrics when they work with me. Uh, because we've got to move away from this like outward appearance. I mean, I think that's one of the greatest things about modeling, going back to my old career and the explosion in diversity, because a lot of people can beat up the sort of body positive movement as like, oh, well, we're ignoring the health consequences of being overweight. And I can agree with that. However, some of the people that I know, especially like from my modeling days that are considered plus size women, are some of the most healthy people I know, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, so just this like snap judgment of somebody based on their weight or snap judgment of yourself. And if you're a successful human or a worthy human or any of those things based on the number that you see on the scale, like we've got to get rid of that.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've had actually 2 women on this podcast that have lost 100 pounds, and one of them lost 100 pounds twice. She lost it, gained it back, and then
Wow.
lost it, and it's so fascinating because, I'll ask them similar sets of questions, and they're like, "Look, dude, on the journey, you're so fixated on the number, but I'll tell you it is a mindset." Like, that is
Yeah.
when you make it through that transformation, there is a larger transformation in the mind than there is in the body, as profound as the body is. And, I think so much of it's just attributed to the fact that like our sight is our most dominant sense for the vast majority of humans. I
For
mean, it
sure.
uses up the most of energy. It's
Yeah.
how we process the world, and like and so I think naturally we look at people, and it's just, I think there's a lot of that's just innate as a human being, where we're, as much as you don't want to, you compare. It's
Yeah.
just like whether we're talking about weight or that person looks happier. And I think you'll even attest to like there are probably plenty of women that on the outside look like they're healthy, and then you actually know them, and you're like, that is not a healthy person right there.
Well, that was me, Chris. Like, that was
Yeah,
me. I mean, I looked the picture of health. I got paid for the way that I looked, and I was drinking way too much alcohol. I had no idea how to cook food. I'd call my mom from the middle of the grocery store crying all the time because I had no idea what to do. I was so overwhelmed by food and how to cook, and I had no idea. I was always eating out, like 100% exactly what you're talking about, but I looked healthy.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm there with you. It's a lot to unravel there with your clients when it's so fixated on that.
Yeah.
Well, let's start to dive into you a little bit. So we'll dive into a habit, and then we'll pivot over to mindset. And I recognize there's a lot of challenges to find like what's the one that's supporting you the most, because clearly you've got a lot of really good ones. But is there one that really stands out to you at this stage of where you're at in your journey, that a particular habit that has become really fundamental to your well-being, your overall success as an individual?
Yeah, I would say hard these are, like, so close. There's 2, but I'm gonna go with movement as number 1. Movement, besides all of the physiological benefits that we know to be true, not just in your body, but how it changes your brain. Going back to what I said in the beginning, it has helped me build my confidence so much. This just having a plan, sticking to it, following through on it, and seeing results because of it, getting stronger because of it. I really have dealt with a lot of just self doubt in general. And it's amazing to me that if you follow, it's such I hate to say it's simple because people can find it so overwhelming. I did find it so overwhelming for so long, but it really is a simple process. If you stick to something and you progressively overload it, whether it's cardio, weights, whatever it might be, you progress. That's it. And it doesn't matter. Like the gym is just this little like microcosmic representation of that and how it applies to life in general. And I'm 100% convinced that that's why I was able to start my own business. I wouldn't have had the confidence to do this several years ago at all. I think that just putting in the work and showing up for myself and proving to myself that I care enough about myself to do that has completely impacted my life in a way that I can't even put into words. So movement's number 1. I know that I have to keep doing that. I know I have to keep showing up for myself. But meditation is a very, very, very close second behind that.
Mm. So let's unravel the movement if we can. Let's get a little tactical here. What is movement from your perspective? Like, when do you do it? What are you doing? Yeah, let's start there.
It's changed a lot for me. Well, yeah, because it went from being pretty much nothing. I mean, living in New York, it was better, right? Because you have to walk everywhere in New York. So I was at least getting movement just getting around the city. But when I came out to Idaho, I actually wound up building my community here through rock climbing.
Mm,
And that actually came out of my whole obsession around anxiety because I found a group in Austria that's doing this really amazing work demonstrating that climbing can be as effective as cognitive behavioral therapy as a form of therapy, which I was just like, what? This is so cool. And so, I can't like tell you this in a linear way, but it all sort of happened around the same time. I moved out here. I needed to meet people. Somebody suggested this climbing gym. I went to the climbing gym. I was going through that divorce, and climbing also has that really amazing thing. You push yourself to places you don't think you can go because you're roped in, you're strapped in, so nothing's going to happen to you. So you push yourself beyond what you think you're capable of, and then all of a sudden you do something that you're like, I can't do this, and then you do it and you're like, what did I just do? So it was just, again, like, confidence wise for me, it was a really big confidence builder. And then I also built up my community there, so I love to climb. That's definitely a huge thing, whether it's inside or outside. I love to lift in the gym. I love the feeling of getting stronger. I remember getting up in the middle. I sleep with my bed on the floor so my little chihuahua can climb in and out of my bed. And I got up to just like go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And I remember like standing up and being like, why did that feel so easy? Like I was just getting stronger, It's just how it impacts every little bit of your life. It's amazing. But now I tore my PCL a couple months ago, and I have been having to limit myself. So sometimes it's just getting out for a walk.
mm.
Sometimes it's just doing I don't know if you saw any of my Instagram stories. I was just in Argentina for a month, and we were, just traveling around. I was doing sit-ups in the back of the car. I was laying in the back of the car doing sit-ups because I was like, "I gotta do something," you know? I also did a sit-up challenge, so that helped. But, it really just is anything. We sit all the time, man. You're sitting in front of your
Mhm.
computer all day. You're sitting in your car on your commute. You're sitting in an airplane. You're sitting even at the airport. I'm like, why at the airport are we choosing to sit when we just sat in the car and we're about to sit on the airplane? Like, what? Mike, do you know who Michael Easter is? The Comfort Crisis?
No.
Oh my God, Chris, you got to look him up. Go get the
Yeah,
Comfort
okay.
Crisis. You're going to love it. But he talks about rucking in the airport. You've got a weighted backpack. Go walk around. What are you doing sitting? Why? Why are you sitting? So, really, movement for me is anything that combats my sitting requirement that this life demands of me.
So interesting. On the rock climbing stuff, I saw a couple of your posts. I've only had one experience with rock climbing. I was trying to find an activity for my little guy. He hasn't sort of found his sport, and so I was like, well, let's just try rock climbing. And
Yeah.
you made the comment of like, oh, you're in these harnesses, you're safe. I'm gonna be honest with you, Heidi. I didn't feel safe. Like I knew I wasn't gonna die, but like, and I'm in pretty good shape, but there's a difference between, if you don't rock climb, you're not in rock climbing shape. Like you might be in shape, but you're not in that shape. So
Yeah.
I remember doing it, and I'm fully aware that I'm not going to die going up this wall. The wall's only, I don't know, whatever, 100 feet or so. So I'm fully aware of that, 100% confidence, like I'm good. And I make it like 2/3 up this wall, and my heart is racing so fast, and I'm like, why am I so nervous? Like if I let go, I'm suspended. There's no jerk. I'm not going to splat on the ground. And so I got up 2/3 on this wall, and I had to stop. And not only did I had to stop, but I actually had to climb down like 20 feet because I didn't want to fall from that high of a up. It was so interesting how
Yeah.
anxiety ridden I was, fully knowing that I was safe. It's been on the
I,
top of my mind that I need to go back there and like really deal with that demon, but it was interesting.
you should, but I love that you just said that. Anxiety is not something you can reason with. And
Yeah.
that's the craziest thing because not only does anxiety like actually cut off your cognitive capabilities, it's just not something that you can that can be reasoned with. And so for people who don't experience it and they try to reason with you when you're experiencing anxiety, it's just not something you can do. So unless you can bring yourself back out of that space of anxiety and then start to address whatever's going on, it's like for you coming back down to the ground. Yeah, you should go face that. You should go face that. You might
Yeah,
surprise
I need to
yourself.
not have my kids there and maybe bring a buddy, but it's like I'm very aware of like I wanna just understand because I mean, I'm sure you've seen Free Solo, right?
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that movie?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, have you seen The Alpinist?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, those are just like, and I'm just like mind boggled at like the level of skill, not for climbing the rock, but literally for climbing the rock, knowing that there was nothing there to support you. That's like a whole nother level. Anyways, let me ask you this. When it comes to your movement, what happens when you don't move? Like, is there like, I don't know if this is like a daily activity for you. It sounds like there's a lots of different types of ways you can sort of practice your movement. I think I've seen you running. You've got the gym. Maybe it's sit ups in the back of a car. It's walking at an airport. Clearly, there's all these different ways you
Right.
can go about it. But are there times where you can't get your movement in for one reason or another? And if so, what effect does it have on you not practicing this habit or performing it?
I can't say that in the past couple of years that's been a thing that doesn't happen. It used to be all the time, but it's become so wildly important to me that it just doesn't not happen in some capacity. I will say it hasn't been able to happen to the extent that I would like it to in the past several months with my knee, and that's been hard. It's been really hard, and that's why meditation's like a really close second. I'm a big believer in this concept of if it's not okay, it's not the end, and
Mm.
you just have to keep pushing through and figuring out the best option for that moment. So for me, the best option has not been what I would ideally like it to be, but I just do what I can with what I've got at the moment, knowing that this isn't the end and that it's going to get better and then I'm going to figure it out. And I just got to do what I can do while I can.
I can't help but notice you didn't mention it here, but when I look at your feed, there is so much nature involved.
Yeah.
And I am a fanatic on nature. Any chance I can like inject like let's talk about nature for a couple of minutes. But so I'll just sort of prime you with a question like your number one habit is movement. You live in a beautiful part of the world. What role does nature play in this movement practice of yours?
It's pretty huge, but I think I'm a little bit maybe different than like let's say my boyfriend. He has to go on these like multi-day expeditions where his phone doesn't work and nobody can reach him and he might die. He has to, like, that's nature. Very like what Thoreau type adventure, right? And I I don't know why. I think it's because I've lived like such an what I feel is an unbelievably blessed life. I find so much joy in literally the tiniest things. Like, we have it's not even a porch, but we have a couple stairs that go up to our front door. And I love to take my little Crazy Creek. I don't know if you know those chairs, they just fold up they're little cushions. And I sit out on the front porch and I drink my coffee in the morning. Not when it's snowing, but I sit on the porch and drink my coffee in the morning and like pay attention to the way the grass sparkles because there's dew on it and I feel the sun on my face and I feel the wind on my face and I just feel so insanely lucky to be at a place where I can stop and do that because so many people have so much going on for them that they don't even have the luxury of stopping and doing that. So nature for me doesn't, as much as I'm lucky and really happy and love getting out into like Red Rocks National Park or Yosemite or whatever craziness there is out here, mind blowing and endless out here. Just those little moments. I'm obsessed with the tiniest flowers. When I was in Argentina, the boys were making so much fun of me for it. I was with my boyfriend and our best friend, and just these tiny little flowers. I'm like, how are you surviving? Like, you're so incredible. Just, I love the little things. It's like, cool, elephant. I'm glad. Like, no, of course you're surviving. You're huge, but look at this little flower. How's it doing that?
Oh my god. Well, the other reason I mention it, so if I roll back like 5 years when I was getting ready to sell my first company, I was like, "Well, what's the next thing?" I thought I wanted to be a landscaper.
Really?
Love love plants. I mean, it's been a hobby. We've owned a couple homes, and I'm also a very type A person. Like I don't do a lot of things, but if I'm going to do it, I'm going to try to be like the best at it. So anyways, like we bought the second house and I was like, okay, let's just sharpen the skills. I went back to like the junior college and I aced every course. I got a
Wow.
degree in design, and then I just practiced on, I was lucky enough to have the resources to practice on my own property. I have like 700 plants on my property. I'm very much of, how do you, I just think nature fixes everything. Like,
Yeah.
in the other connection here, and I love flowers. I mean, just don't get me started. But like everything, like you think of all the colors that nature, like these are just things that are out there. I mean, like
Yeah,
every color, whether we're talking fall colors or, so anyway, I just geek out over all that. The other thing that I
totally.
think is miraculous is that there's so many lessons to learn about nature, and you can apply it to the individual. We steal a lot of our best ideas as humanity from nature, and the way
Yeah,
birds move or dolphins swim, or like how ducks secrete an oil on the bottom of their feathers to prevent them from getting wet. I mean, there's just endless of that, but it also brings perspective
oh
if
yeah,
you let it. And, I think it's very easy, to get wrapped up in your own brain, to get so, oh my God, and I don't want to belittle anybody's situation. We
yeah,
all are miracles. It is just amazing we're all even here. But it's also so easy to get wrapped up in like everything that's happening in my life has like these this massive like monumental consequences, or there's of
right.
great significance. And I find nature, and keep in mind planet earth is just one piece of this whole cosmic thing. I won't even go there with you, but point being is like it brings perspective of like
Yeah,
we're just here for a moment. And so I don't know, for me, getting lost in nature on a run or whatever brings that perspective of like, don't take your problem too seriously. Like,
yeah,
it is serious. Maybe you had a death in the family, you didn't get the promotion, whatever it may be. But I don't know. I think nature does bring a lot of perspective if you let it. So,
yeah, absolutely, I couldn't agree more. We are but a blip in all of this.
not a blip. But anyways, I see a lot of the photos you have on your things. And I mean, just whether we're talking about a leaf or the dew or a mountain, like,
Yeah,
I mean, it is just gorgeous. And I don't know. I think a lot when I think of anxiety too. For me, I need to get outside and like flex in nature, mental health, like those things are really important. And I have a hard time doing that at my desk in front of my computer. It's like, I got to get out and like just detox, if you will. So,
yeah, yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to, that idea of zooming out, whether it's zooming out temporally and saying like, in 5 years, am I even gonna remember this thing that I'm stressing about so much? Or zooming out, in the sense that you and I are talking about, in the grand scheme of life, does this matter? So, yeah, I'm really big on that concept as
yeah.
well. Get out into nature and realize how small you are, and take a little shift in perspective.
Yeah. Well, let's pivot over to mindset here. So you've got this daily practice, or practice for movement. A lot of people would argue the way you think about something is the clarity you really need before you can design a habit into your life. So a lot of people would argue, or have on this podcast saying, well, it's the mindset that comes first. It's the way you think about something. But in a similar vein, is there a particular mindset that is really supporting you at this stage of your life? It really helps your success, your overall well-being.
Yeah. Am I allowed to say the thing that I already said, which is that, if it's not okay, it's not the end? I think
Yeah.
that, taking that approach and holding that to be true in my mind is what allows me to keep going when I'm frustrated or feeling like a quote unquote failure. I mean, you know what it's like running a business, constantly doubting yourself, wondering if you're doing it the right way, wondering if you could be doing it better. And failing forward is what you have to do constantly. And being able to keep that in my head, if it's not okay, it's not the end. Well, what am I going to do? Give up? No, I want to see what the end looks like. You know. So it really helps me to keep moving forward.
So let's dissect that a little bit, because I'm telling you, I'm going to introduce you to Abby. You guys are going to love each other, because she has one. What does she say? It's not progress. What is it? It's not perfection. It's progress. And so it's in a similar vein. But self doubt is such a big thing,
Yeah.
right? I think that's a little bit of what I'm taking away from it. It's not okay. It's not the end here. How long has this been like something you've been focused on, like a mindset? Like, is this fairly new since you started your business, or has this always sort of been a part of your the way you think?
I feel like it's definitely been more recent, and it's been a really healthy change for me because I've always been very outcome focused in my life, which allowed me to be very successful in a lot of ways. I graduated at the top of my class, always did really well in school, and I've always been pretty successful in what I did. And it makes failure really hard to stomach if that's been your experience and that's been what you prioritized. And so I think actually, with my life getting flipped on its head in the way that it did and having to start over, I had to look failure in the face a little bit and figure out how to reframe everything in a way that allowed me to move forward. And taking that approach is what's proven to allow me to do that.
Is this popping up daily for you at this point?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, because I run into it all the time.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
say, like, people always go like, "How's the standard going?" I'm like, "Well, it depends on the week, the day of the week." There's
right.
sometimes I'm like, "Oh my god, the world's gonna change," and other days I'm like, "What am I doing here? Like, why?"
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. I can relate.
so let's try to dissect this just a little bit. So you have, I don't know, like, you're going about your day, and some not so positive, we'll just frame it as a negative thought. Some negative thought comes into your mind and starts to, like, try to derail your day and has you starting to feel a different way, and then this thought comes through, is if it's not okay, it's not the end.
Mhm.
Is that instantaneously at this point? Like, is that, like, is it at a point where negative thought and then you very quickly reboot to this mindset? Is there a lag? Like, what is the process when you're in the moment and you're heading down this me and my wife joke around, it's like the world's crumbling, right? The walls are caving in, like, so when you started to
Yeah.
go in on this negative path, maybe it's not that dramatic. How long before this mindset kicks in? Like, what are you doing? Like, what like, walk us through the details if you can, of, like,
Yeah,
how this.
sure. Actually, I love this question because it reinforces my decision to go with movement as my number 1 versus meditation, because movement is something I can change quickly. You can't necessarily change your mind so quickly. We all know that. If you're angry, if you're upset, like, it is really hard to come out of that space because you're trying to use your mind to control your mind, right? Which
Yeah.
is not a hard or not an easy thing to do. Um, when it's trying to tell you what to do. So that's where I go to movement. And funny enough, before I ever was in this space or even knew that it was something that it was interesting to me, my dad taught me this lesson by was in 8th grade, and I brawled with this teacher that I had all the time. Oh my gosh, we would fight like crazy, and I would come home and I'd be pitching a fit about my teacher. And I came home one day and my dad had hung a heavy bag in the middle of my bedroom. And he was like, "I don't want to hear it anymore. Take it out on the bag." And so I started doing that. And, I never like seriously got into boxing or anything, but it was a very early representation of what I do now, which I'll give you an example. The other day, I was supposed to have a consultation for a new client, and the software that I was using went haywire and it didn't send her the reminder emails. Just like all this stuff went wrong, right? And I just went into this like discouragement downward spiral and was frustrated because I'd invested in this thing and it wasn't working. And I was like, I'm so stupid, blah, blah, blah. I put on my boots, I went outside, I started walking. And I just and that's that nature piece, the movement piece. Like, I genuinely believe going for a walk outside is one of the best things you can do for your mindset when you are struggling. It's something that is just an on switch. You turn out, you put shoes on, you go outside. That's it. And then you are able to slowly shift the way you're thinking about whatever it might be that you're struggling with, you know? So that's where I go back to movement. And I'm glad that I chose it as number 1.
No, I mean, the reason I wanted to ask you that, as you said it, it's so hard, I think, to change the way you're thinking with your mind to a better mindset when you're in the moment. And I'm not even referring to, like, chemical imbalances, which is a whole
Right.
other ball of wax here. but you feel a certain way. And it's like, I try to remind, I coach a lot of people at my previous company, and I always think of like tools in a toolbox. It's like, people that will come to me, they just got bad news. And I know I'm like call number one when they got bad news. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm here for you, but like, have you gone to your checklist? Like,
Yeah.
did you do A, B, C? Cause like, I'm gonna tell you to go do A, B, C first, and then
Yeah.
come to me when there's a little
Yeah.
bit of moment of clarity. And so I think it's good for people to recognize, because we're gonna constantly have these things, right? Like the world's gonna hit you, personal relationships. I mean, God knows there's no end to the heart of life, but it's how do you cope with that in a healthy way? How do you rebound faster? And I'm right there with you with
Yeah.
movement. It's like I got to get outside and like sweat it out in some way, shape, or
Yeah.
form.
It's interesting that you use the toolbox because I use a similarly construction focused analogy for my clients, which is, the foundation of a house. It's concrete and rebar, right? And I like to think of your concrete as being your mindset and your rebar being your habits that hold everything and supply that structure. So when the mindset is not quite there, you have the habits to rely on. You go back to those things and then they help support the mindset that you want to have and that you want to hold day to day.
Yeah, it's an interesting way you brought this up too, because although nobody said it quite the way you just said it, if it's not okay, it's not the end. On this particular podcast, there's a lot of people I've interviewed who are type A personalities, and we go down this sort of rabbit hole of like, well, I got to the level of success that I've had because I'm a perfectionist, or because like failure is not an option, and like I've got to like persevere, and there's resilience. And I agree to that to an extent. And then there's a lot of people that will also, very much like your quote here, is like, how do you enjoy the process? How do you take a little bit of the edge off of the intensity in which you bring? A big one that I've been embracing, it's my vision board. I literally just cloned last year's vision board for this year as well, is enjoy the journey. Try
Hmm.
not to over index on the this milestone and this, and it's hard because we all know, right? If you don't write your goals down, you're less likely to achieve them. If you don't think about the obstacles, it's less likely you'll overcome them. It's like it's all of this
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm like, my God, that's exhausting. I know so much about this habit. Like sometimes it's like, how do you just enjoy life and not not care, but not over index on caring?
Right.
And can you actually like lean into that and trust it? Or will you constantly question and be like, well, that's not exactly what got me to my level of success today? I don't know. How do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile you've been this straight A student, you've had all the success in your life, you've probably put in a tremendous amount of hard work and discipline, and then how do you sort of embrace this like care, but don't care so much that it starts to be a negative?
Well, the reason I like the if it's not okay, it's not the end is because things like enjoy the journey make me feel like crap about myself because I'm like, I'm not enjoying this journey right now. I hate it. you know? And then I just feel bad about myself because I'm failing again at not enjoying the journey? And I'm like, it's just another tool to beat myself up. And so the if it's not okay, it's not the end allows me to say, just keep going, man. Just keep going. Wake up, do the thing. It's going to get better. And it always does? The other thing that came to me really recently, and God, I had not planned on saying this and it might not land well with some people, but I had this realization like, you're allowed to have hard times, Heidi. Like, it's okay to have some really big down points in your life. And not only is it not okay, I hate trivializing things and saying something like, it makes you a more interesting person. But really and truly, like going back to that comfort crisis, the book we were talking about, this push that we have for things to be easy and go well and work out all the time is making us miserable because we set things up to be so comfortable and successful and easy, and all it does, I don't know how much you know about like the pleasure pain paradox and how they exist like basically on a seesaw in your brain, but making everything easy and good and wonderful all the time has this opposing effect that's making us depressed and just completely making us feel kind of worthless as like like a society, you know? And it's like, if you don't go through those hard times, evolutionarily speaking, even, we used to have to go through so much hard work and difficulty in general to enjoy anything, right? And now we don't have to do any of that stuff. So like this realization of like, I'm going through these hard times because it's going to make me a dang better person, a stronger person, somebody who can relate to others better, somebody who can help others more. It's going to make me not so focused on myself and more focused on the outward world and helping other people around me. Like, it's not just okay to go through a hard time. Like, welcome it, welcome it, and go through it and know that it's not lasting forever. If it's not okay, it's not the end. Just go through it, you know?
I totally agree with you. One of the quotes I always sort of bring up on the mindset is I used to like have all these like motivational videos. I'd like scour the internet and I'd find all these phenomenal collagist type videos, and then I'd put them into a play track on like I'd call it my morning run. And I think for an entire year I just listened to it on repeat, like just positive brainwash. I mean, just every run.
Wow.
And I mean, I run 4 days a week. So I mean, I'm out there
Yeah.
for 7 hours and I would just consume this. I mean, to the point, like I've memorized every video. And one of the better quotes that I've run across is, if you do what is easy, your life will be hard. If you do what is hard, your life will be easy.
Oh my God,
And
yes.
people don't like to always talk about it, but like, I don't care who you are on this planet. Life is just hard. Like, you
Mhm.
are going to, at one point, you will lose more things in life. Like, people that you love will start to age, they'll
Yeah.
die, like stuff happens. And I would even argue, like, if you try to take the comfort road, right? You try to take what you think may be the path of least resistance or what is easy, like inevitably, like I think you'll run into health issues, right? You'll
Yeah.
run into stress, right? If you choose never to exercise or eat healthy, you will pay a price for that at one point. More doctor's
Right.
visits, more cost. You will be here for a shorter period of time. So I think inevitably you have to choose which one of these hards do you want.
Right.
Um, I know there's an argument to say like, choice is a mirage. We don't really have choice. There is no free will. That's a whole nother topic. But I do like to believe like I'll choose my heart. Like
Yeah.
I'll go for the runs. It's not always easy. I'll go to the gym. It's not always easy. I'll, be frugal when I don't necessarily have to be. And I feel like by doing those, you set yourself up for, your definition of success. But I am a believer of like life's hard. You just got to choose like which hard do you want? Do you want to feel like you're in control, or do you want to feel like you're not in control? But either way, like you're gonna experience it one way or another.
Yeah. And I think, God, this goes for fitness, this goes for so many things. We so often want to like put in the work and immediately see the result, that instant gratification, right? So it's like, oh, I worked out 2 days. Like, why don't I look different? Or why don't I feel stronger? Right? Because you worked out for 2 days. But the same thing can be said for going all the way back again to why I choose to show up in the gym for myself. On the days when I don't quote unquote want to, when I'm tired, or it's just been a long day, or like it was really snowy last week and I didn't really want to drive to the gym because I'm scared of driving in the snow, like whatever it might be. When you make the decision to do the hard thing, it sets you up to do it so much more easily when you're actually dealing with real hard things. Going to
Yeah,
the gym is not that hard of a decision, but every single day that I make the decision to do it, it's building up that sense of discipline in and self-efficacy, so that when
yeah,
you are actually faced with something really hard in life, you don't feel as out of control, and I can handle this. I can do this. I'm going to show up. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to or get through it, whatever it might be. But it builds up that sense of self-efficacy, and it's a subtle thing and it takes a long time to build, and people don't like that. But man, I want to feel well equipped to handle when life gets really hard, you know? I want to be able to be able to face that with confidence. And I know that when I show up for myself and my health, that sets me up for success in doing so.
so well said. I mean, resiliency, and it's like every day is an opportunity to do a little bit of training for that hypothetical future event, which isn't
Yeah.
hypothetical. We just don't know what it is right now. There'll be something for sure. Yeah, no, so well said. Let me ask you this as our sort of our final question. So much of the podcast is hyper focused on who Heidi is and your habits and mindsets, but try to take a more macro perspective. We are two people on this podcast of 8 billion.
Hmm.
And I think a lot about like the challenges we face as a society, which are so huge. If there was a way to wave a magic wand, so this is completely hypothetical, and you could distill down some habit or mindset that all of humanity would just automatically embrace, what is the mindset or the habit that you think would nudge us in a more loving and kind direction as a species,
A habit that would
or a
move us.
mindset or a way of
Hab-
thinking?
Habit or a way of thinking. Okay, it's probably gonna, I don't know, maybe seem cheesy to just stay on brand, but I think I'm gonna stick with something we've been talking about this whole time, which is just embracing discomfort, because I think that it makes us relate to each other better. I think it takes away our inward focus, when things get hard, whether it's like an annoyance in a grocery store line or actually something that's a really big challenge in our life, we tend to go inward and say, I'm frustrated, poor me. It just all becomes very, I don't want to use the word narcissistic, but kind of, you go inward. And I think that if we embrace discomfort as a part of life and as something to be welcomed, it not only makes us more relatable to each other, but I think it helps us to keep our focus outward and keep our focus on each other and how to help each other through this hard thing called life. Yeah. So I'm going to stick with embracing discomfort.
Yeah, I like that. I have a similar one that touches on the same thing, and I think the end result of it is just it's tough to be a human sometimes, and I
Yeah.
think the more we accept that, I think there's a certain level of empathy that can extend to people I don't know. Whether
Yeah.
I'm in a, and I've always taken this to heart. I've always been an empath. I'm incredibly sensitive to animals and plants and people. And I don't know, I live my life now of like, if somebody's not in a good mood, they cut you off or they're bad. I just think of like, they're probably going through it.
Yeah.
You don't know. You don't know if they got diagnosed with cancer. You don't know that they lost their job. You don't know if they're struggling to put food on the table. Like you don't know, but chances are something's happening. And, very
Yeah.
much like we've even talked on this, like, you go through some things and like your self-doubt and being an entrepreneur, like, hey, me over here too. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
like we're all so much more alike than we are different. And I think it's healthy to embrace that because I think it hopefully brings a little bit more compassion to all of our interactions that we have with people.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah. 100% well said.
Awesome. Awesome. Where can people go to learn more about you? Where's the right place to send them?
So, I actually would love to plug a little quiz that I've created because I want people to, women especially, to get real with themselves about their health habits. So, I've created a little quiz that's on my website, which is HeidiLindgrenFitness.com/let's get real. And
Okay.
it'll just kind of help you take a really good look at your own health habits and determine if maybe you need to make a few changes. And then I've got some tools available for people if they do find that they're in a space of wanting to make change, or I obviously have my coaching and my programs.
Okay, awesome. Well, I will
Yeah.
make sure we include all of that in the show notes. Heidi, such a fun conversation like that. Like I really did the best job I could to constrain all my questions, but I could have easily just turned this into like a rich roll podcast and jammed out for hours. So thanks so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. And thanks for sharing more about yourself. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I just love the passion you bring to clearly like not only everything you do, but also just this sense of like, how do we just do better? It's pretty awesome. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Standard. Before we go, click on the link in the show notes of this episode to learn more about today's guest. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody who you think would benefit from it as well.